I'm Dr. Rachel Griffiths, and I'm with my father and partner in aquatics.
Dr. Tom Griffiths.
Welcome to the Drowning Files, where each week we share a lawsuit we've been involved in or another true story with suggestions to learn from these tragedies to save lives. What case do you have today?
This case is another quarry case that occurred in the Northeast United States. And many of these quarries are very attractive because of the high cliffs that can be used to jump and dive off from. Also, usually the water clarity is very good because there's no activity in the water. Oftentimes, these quarries have clear water that's crystal blue or aquamarine. And on a hot summer day, in an industrial park where there were many businesses but not many residential homes and no playgrounds or parks in the vicinity, there was known to be a large quarry, a limestone quarry that was fairly hidden from the public. It was tucked away behind these warehouses, so you had to really look for it in order to find it. Plus, there was landscaping around the perimeter, around the cliffs, the top of the cliffs of the quarry. So, on this particular day, a group of kids, teenage kids, boys and girls alike, wanted to cool off, and someone had heard about the quarry through local fishermen, and they decided to enter the quarry to see if they could go swimming. The problem with quarries uh, in the United States, and I would bet around the world, is that they're difficult to secure. There's a lot of land surrounding the quarry, and the quarry is a big, huge hole in the ground. The land surrounding the quarry is often very rural and rugged. So it takes time and money and energy to put up fencing that is effective and to put up warning signage. And many quarries just don't do a good job of this. So this group of kids found gaps in the fence, accessed the quarry. Quarries often have a rough roadway that goes from the very top down into the quarry, and that was created when trucks would go into the quarry to get whatever was being mined to haul out up and transport it on the street. So usually there's a road leading down, and in this case they followed a road down, and there was a lot of equipment floating on the water. There were floating docks in the water for different types of water activities and mining activities. I believe, as I recall, they use the water for other purposes, other manufacturing purposes surrounding the quarry. And like many quarries, the drop off is severe. You can walk along the edge and then just 10 feet away get into water over your head. And many of these quarries are exceedingly deep. We're talking about 30, 40, 50 feet deep. So in this particular case, they were playing around, wrestling on the edge of the water, throwing a ball, and one of the young men got into water over his head, couldn't make it back to the shore safely. And his friends, who recognized his distress immediately, looked for branches, looked for poles, looked for rope, looked for other things to try to extend to this victim who was thrashing in the water and just could not get anything to him to pull him out. They, in fact, tried to reach their arms in to get him, but because the slope was so steep, the would-be rescuers found themselves getting into distress, and they started sliding down the slope. When you're at a quarry, it's usually distant from any help. And so in this case, they were calling on cell phones. They were running up and out of the quarry looking for help. By the time 911 responded. Getting rescue personnel down into the quarry was extremely difficult, and as many open water rescues take place, when it's an open water event and you have to call 911, it usually ends up being a body recovery. So that's what this was. They had to get the scuba team in there. It was recovered in about 30 feet of water. And of course, it was too late for any resuscitation efforts to be effective. So in this case, the kids were being kids and did not act with common sense, reasonably and prudently. Apparently, this boy was not a good swimmer, and apparently his friends weren't strong swimmers either. Otherwise, they might have been able to rescue him. There was no supervision, no lifeguards. It was not a swim at your own risk. It was keep out, danger, do not swim. But the facility could have done a much better job with barriers like fencing, signage, and even patrols. I've recommended several times that many of these quarries, particularly when it's hazy, hot, and humid, need to be patrolled by someone on a ATV or a four-wheel drive Jeep or truck. If nothing else, someone from afar checking out the quarry with binoculars or whatever. But this lawsuit resulted in a big settlement for the family because young adults and teenagers constantly frequented this quarry to fish, to party, to drink, and swim. And so it was foreseeable that this would happen. And yet the company that owned the quarry and owned the facilities did very little to be proactive and keep people out of the quarry. And so another tragic quarry drowning, and this is another area that just needs to be strengthened among water safety personnel. And just because we don't lifeguard those and just because we don't have recreational activities in them, we should let people know that they have to do a better job educating and warning young people from going in this quarry. And so that's the case I have for you today.